Welcome back, everyone. This is Shadow Drake. So last time we mostly got the whole infrastructure set up for the filtering, the fuel, and the stirlings. I mean, there's like some things to do here and there, but the main part was that it needed to be set up. So now this one's going to be a little bit more code heavy because we're going to be coding most of it. Like the oxygen filtration didn't really need much. It just needs to just turn on when it sees something on the input. But we got to do the fuel mix, and we got to do the H2 combustor, and finally the whole Stirling cooling setup. Now, the Stirling cooling part, that's going to be a lot more complicated, so it's probably going to happen later. The main problem, I guess it's not really a problem, but the main thing to deal with is that with 27 plants, I'm making enough oxygen to breathe. So there's only a small amount of spare oxygen that can go into to become fuel mix. But as soon as I get like the 80 something oxygen, I'll be able to, I should be making more than enough oxygen to turn into water. So of course, skipping some stuff. Skipping the mining trip because I'm gonna need steel and silicon because gotta make a lot of pipes. You just need a lot of pipes in this game. It's an atmospheric simulator. You're gonna need pipes to help you simulate some atmospheres in the game world. I believe I have one last bit of the playthrough. I don't remember. I want to say that this is right before the updates. It may or may not be. I think it is. Yeah. This is right before the update. So this is the last bit of playthrough I did right before the harm suit came out. It's not like I'll be able to do much with the harm suit as soon as it comes out because I'm not going to be able to get to the whole Stirling programming part. That's something that desperately needs to happen before I start getting distracted with other stuff. So now, the fuel mix, H2 combustor, that I think that's the main goals. I've, been out of water, been basically drinking water, have my potatoes. They all seem better after the kerfluffle where they were darkness deficient the last time. I don't know why. I know Vulcan seasons kind of mess with it, but I wasn't expecting it to go wrong day 19. Maybe day 60, day 70, yeah, but not day 19. And you see I have 3 spare cereal bars left, so not gonna be, let's just be honest. I'm growing a literal field of potatoes in a hostile world, being that is orbiting a black hole. Food is not a problem. Water is the bigger problem because I'm going through my plant water. One thing that I'm not sure of is that I guess, eventually check is do grow lights get blocked by other planters? That's surprisingly something that I never thought about. I wonder if I could have like a double tiered layer of planters. It's gonna make the greenhouse look absolutely terrible and like some idiot designed the whole thing, but technically, what I have up there is enough to get what, 80 almost 80 potatoes. If I really want to expand it, I could just suffer through the injustice of ugliness. Just, double my potato capacity. Like, I literally could just harvest all those potatoes and replant them. Once I get 27, harvest all 27 potatoes and replant them and basically have 160 potatoes. If 60 potatoes are what I need to be water positive, what's 120... No, on 100 surplus of potatoes, I'm pretty sure that will give me a massive boost of oxygen generation. I might actually do that at some point. I don't know. Could I suffer the potatoes looking absolutely stupid? Yeah, well, maybe once I get the inside automated. Now, I am re-recording this because my computer decided to restart in the middle of re-recording this, so I have no idea what I talked about the previous part. Because I really need to rewatch that and what I was going with. I know in the previous part I was going on about the whole safeties and over-engineering and stuff. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but, the fuel mixing. The fuel mixer is the thing that I want to work on first. And most of the times I've worked with making a perfect fuel mix, exactly 2 volatiles per oxygen, with the minute of air, like maybe millimoles of air. And that's because the rocketry really, really depends on a very precise fuel mix to get the absolute maximum amount of thrust and stuff. Like, other processes, are affected by it being off, but not to the extent like the rocketry would. I mean, technically rocketry isn't as heavily affected if you have more than enough thrust for the engine so that it can overcome gravity. But, because you're trying to fight with limited space, you really do want to make sure that it's correct in rocketry. On the opposite end, the H2 combustor, no. You don't really need to be exact. If you make it a little bit more volatile rich, you ensure that you burned all your oxygen. And you ensure that that the only leftovers would be volatiles. And if you had more volatiles than oxygen, then that's not a problem. You can afford to have it be a little bit volatile rich. Speaking of which, I finally took out the fuel canister in the welder. 3007. I think there was about 30 moles of oxygen in there. I forgot to check. I forgot to check before I put it in there. Now, according to the math for the H2 combustor, supposedly on a perfect fuel mix, you get 35%. Take the amount of oxygen. I believe it's 35%, and basically multiply that number, multiply by 1.35, and that's how much water you should expect to get. Which, if I'm putting 30 oxygen in there, the math is not going to be nice, but I'm just going to round it. Let's say after air, so I get an extra 30% of that as water. That means I make 39 moles of water from that oxygen, which is not bad. That's actually a decent amount. And so because of that, I had to do the math for potatoes making enough oxygen, so that over a 1 in-game hour, basically 60 minutes, I need to be making about at least 3 to 4 liters of water. And a liter of water is about 56 moles, so multiply that by 4, so let's just say 210 moles of water. So, potato plants need to exhale enough oxygen to get 210, moles of water out from the oxygen, so And I believe that number was somewhere around 160, 150 or something like that. And that's how I came up with the whole 60 roughly 60 potato plants, factoring in the 20 that you need for breathing on stationary difficulty. Now, eventually the greenhouse is going to be breathable. Eventually. Uh, like I said, the 27 something is working towards that. It's not very fast. I need at least 55 moles of oxygen to be safely breathable. I think I could get by as low as 45, 47, but I don't know how much lung damage that, or if that would accumulate lung damage from lack of oxygen, And now that the cryotube has been adjusted to require liquid nitrogen to heal you, it's not something that I want to just, take the chance. I don't want to have too little oxygen that I develop lung damage that I then can't heal easily because one, I think I lost my heal pill. I don't remember where I put it. And, well, two, can't make heal pills until I buy ferns, which, traitor. Not gonna do that just yet. And while I technically could make liquid oxygen, I have the potatoes. I don't really have the water to spare to turn potatoes and water to nitrogen so that I can then make 10 liters of liquid nitrogen. I don't even have the oxygen to spare to pressurize a nitrogen tank for that. Oh yeah, this was a weird thing. Somehow when I jumped up there, I got myself stuck in between those frames. Which is really weird because normally when you would get yourself stuck like that, you actually just outright damage and or destroy your suit. So that was quite surprising that I got myself stuck in there without any literal harm or damage. Now, I remember looking at that to see what it was, and I think it was, what, 30-something moles of water? I literally just missed it. And I wanted to see whether the 4 stirlings could cool that down. And it got it down to about 300 Celsius, which is close, but not quite. That's kind of where I realized that if I were to put 2 liters of water for it to cool down, it might never cool it down enough. So, yeah. That would be a problem. So I'm thinking that I actually will have to increase the amount of stirlings by maybe another 1 or 2. Oh, waste tank caution. I haven't seen that in a while. But I'm not entirely sure just yet exactly by how much. I think 4 is enough. 2 might be... Yeah, 4 is enough. An extra 2 would definitely help. And so I am now essentially just trying to get the whole system working. It's... yeah. I will go back to Mars. for sure. I just got like a big. I really did want to do the new toys and finish the commentary I did on this bit of the playthrough. Yeah, look at that. 7.29 liters of water, so I'm dangerously close to the 6 liter. I didn't want to be there. And the constant annoyance of the shower. Yeah, you see that there was 21 moles of oxygen, approximately. Which isn't bad, actually. It just kind of goes to show just how well it's kind of keeping up with that. Like, just that little bit. So it is actually building up. It will be breathable soon. That's the main goal. Now, my intention for this system, for the stirlings, it's going to be more complicated. I might go into more detail about it. But my goal is that the stirlings will cool the water at night. But it needs to be it needs to be a system that knows what kind of like a state machine or a step machine. You see that if you've watched my earlier stuff, you see that I program in that way multiple times. And the only reason for that is because I ensure that stuff is happening when I want it to, when I, so that things that I don't want to happen don't happen, or if something unwanted happens, I know where to look at to go see why it happened, because I programmed something in the wrong place. And that's what the whole Stirling setup is going to be. You're going to see, you're more than likely going to see me program that. Maybe not, maybe next part. So I'm just trying to get everything ready for that. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. This whole system itself should be capable of working on its own for quite some time. The caveats that I have is, since I don't have a lot of spare oxygen, I can't fill tanks or mix fuel and as well as I would expect them to be. Like I want to add oxygen to the fuel tank, but I also want to make sure that my oxygen tank doesn't drop below a certain amount. That way, I have spare oxygen for rooms or for my O2 canister and stuff. But it's not like I will have a surplus of oxygen. I'm quite literally just now making some oxygen. I'm trying to fill the greenhouse with oxygen, so I won't have any spare oxygen to turn into fuel mix for quite some time. If I was doing the trading, that wouldn't be a problem, because I could have just bought 20. From a gas trader, I could have bought the oxygen. 20 of the 100 moles of oxygen get 2,000 moles of oxygen. That would have been enough for pressurizing the greenhouse and having some spare inside the oxygen tank. Alternately, also could have just bought the oxygen in volatiles to make fuel mix so that it can kickstart my water. Also could have just bought the hot steam and just cooled that directly into Stirling. But not going for trading, so a lot of the easy stuff is just not available to me. Which leads to waiting for potatoes to breathe. Like, what can make this run absolutely possible as well is that when you get to a point where you have a decent sum of water, like maybe if I had planted and gotten all, planted in the shade, got all my potatoes by now, and made a system for refilling the greenhouse with oxygen and just pumping out the oxygen, then I could have gone into a sleeper for, who knows, maybe 10, 20 days. 10, 20 in-game days. So basically, while I'm in that sleeper, the only cost would be power, which, let's just be honest, the stirlings at night are generating more than enough power. So that's not an issue. Cooling is not an issue because the whole cooling system works. As far as running out of oxygen, that's not an issue because I would have 80 something plants. 20 were needed for breathing. So that means I have about 60 potatoes that are constantly making oxygen, that are constantly filling the tank, which can then be used to make fuel or other stuff. Oh, hey, look, storm's coming. And so if I, went to the sleeper for 10, 20 in-game days, say 30 in-game days, so that's basically 3 hours. So 60 potatoes for 3 hours making oxygen, excess oxygen, I think it was 8. That would be quite a bit of oxygen that they would make, that when I wake up, I'll be ready to start doing something with that, changing some of that to water and stuff. And because potatoes, well, plants in general barely use water, even if I went to bed with 6 liters of water, I probably would expect to wake up with maybe still like 5 3/4 or something. I don't know. I haven't done the exact math, but I wouldn't expect to have lost much water. I would still have some water that I can, wake up and start getting the H2 Combustor stuff set up. And then, lived. Had a much easier time surviving. I didn't really want to do that for this playthrough. It's... Personally, I'm not against that. It is one of those sit down and wait type things. But, I mean, for a planet like Venus, I would say Venus, you kind of almost might need to do that. Because you just don't want to be outside for very long. Although the interesting thing with Venus would be, now that we have the harm suits, if the teching up will be rough there, but if you can tech up and build a harm suit and use that when you go mining outside, that probably would help to I mean, the main thing about that will be that you'll stop burning through oxygen and have it go to your waste tank, so you can stay out there much longer. The problem is you need to make a way to cool some pollutants down so that they can liquefy, which probably won't be a problem, but still. Alright, so what are we doing here? We are coding to get the fuel mixer. So letting the game run, I believe. I think it's running. Yeah, it's running because the pipes are growing. So that my hygiene can recover. So same thing, like get all my devices, my analyzers, my pumps, my fuel pump, get the main part of the code, my main, the end, the yield, the J main, and then getting this different settings for the pumps, putting them all on their own stuff, typical stuff. Now, because I know what it is, I want to be able, for this fuel mixer, I want to have the volatile pump be essentially a slave as to the current ratio of oxygen. What I mean by that is, if I have 10 moles of oxygen and no volatiles, then the pump will try to pump in 20 moles of volatiles in there. And if I have 30 moles of oxygen and already have 30 moles of volatiles, then it's just going to fill the missing 30, get exactly double. So that's what I want to do. I want the volatiles to pump in based on how much oxygen is inside the pipe already. Because I'm gonna have a surplus of volatiles. You know that it's I'm gonna have the least of volatile of oxygen for this. Now for the oxygen side of things, I want to be able to pump in oxygen to make fuel mix, but I also don't want to pump the pump so much that I get less than, I think it was 2 or 3 megapascals on the input. Or that was the original thought. But since I need oxygen to prime the whole system, I figured I might as well just actually make that number really, really small so that I can go on ahead and make fuel mix, so that I can go on ahead and start making water. And as the potatoes respirate and give me oxygen, I'll eventually come back and bump up those limits to what I wanted them to be. If I can somehow send a rocket out and bring back some space oxygen, that would be even better. Anyways, so I'm gonna use PV equals nRT. Find out that V equals nRT over P to get the volume setting of the volume pumps. So first up is oxygen, and quite honestly, I just want to pump it until a certain point.
Oxygen low.
I don't remember how much I wanted to have in there. I think I wanted to have enough for
Oxygen low.
what was it? Get the fuel tank to maybe 20 megapascals.
Oxygen low.
I have to look at what I do in the code, but typically I did stuff based on how I wanted it to end up at, or the limitation. And I'll put the other limitations later. But yeah, this having to turn everything on is gonna get old. Oh, so I've got about 40 moles of water in there. Now what I did there is I just added a little bit of oxygen and a little bit of volatiles so that I can kind of see how the system reacts to the changes. I didn't have a lot to spare, but I wanted to make sure that in the end it makes a perfect fuel mix. And the first thing I wanted to do was to put an imperfect mix in there. It's like, yeah, I could use gas mixers, but I like them, but the math for them is a little more complicated for me to wrap my head around. I don't know why, it just is. Maybe it's because it has to do with a bunch of temperatures and ratios, even though I'm doing basically the same thing with the volume pumps. There's the storm. So yeah, even, there you go. My first batch of water.
Power low.
That didn't make a lot of water, but it's some. It's some. So it looks like this will be a success. to some degree. And seeds. There we go. The moment I've been waiting for. Where I have a field of potatoes in Vulcan. Making all the oxygen I want. That I'm going to need. Now, I actually was wondering one thing. I was confused by that one. It didn't seed. I just figured I might as well just keep going. Doesn't matter. I was wondering one thing, like, when the plants are sprouts, I thought I remember reading somewhere, I don't know if it's incorrect information or pre-plant stuff, but I thought I remember seeing that sprouts, you know, freshly planted sprouts, basically where they are right now, that sprouts have a much lower gas conversion rate compared to when they're grown up. I don't know that that's true, to be honest. I don't think it is. Either way, that's a lot of potatoes. Apparently I got one potato from that one plant. Clearly some of them did not win the genetic lottery from whatever the heck happened. Now, there is a way to quick harvest, and that's if you hold the Alt button to bring down the mouse cursor, and you can click on the potato, or, you know, the plants. You'll just quick harvest them. I normally did that a lot, but I think the only reason I did it the long way was just because it's not like I'm rushing anymore. Alright, one more seed left. I don't know that that stands for anything, but there you go. I got my field of potatoes. I believe it's a 13 by 6. No, 6. Yeah, 13 by 6. That's a lot of potatoes. 78 if I remember right. $78 potatoes. And so now the main thing for them to do is first make the greenhouse breathable so that I can stop using the airlock as a my hygiene area. And then I need to start... I will eventually need to pressurize the printer room so that I can actually print stuff in there. You know, without a suit or anything. But before I do that, I need to build some extra oxygen. Because pressurizing the printer room is technically not a lot of oxygen. I just want to make sure that I have at least 55 in it. And it's a 9 room total, or technically it's 11 frames worth of stuff, so I need 60 by 10 ish 11, so you know, 660 moles. So I need 660 moles of oxygen to make that breathable. I mean, sure, 2 of those spaces are airlocks, but the extra little bits will help. That's crazy to see that one side is trying to exchange 102 moles and the other side is 12. Like, I know that counterflow heat exchanger is woefully incapable of fully exchanging the thermal energy between the liquid pollutants generated and the gaseous volatiles. Like, I know that that's the case. But just what little bits I can see, it's just the little bits that help. And you see I'm at 25.4 moles. So I was looking at that, I'm like, alright, I'm halfway there. I don't remember the exact number I need, but I remember that it isn't quite 60. 60 for sure is safe.
Oxygen low.
Alright, so I'm back to coding this. Alright, so all I did was figure out how much uh, oxygen and volatiles were in the fuel pipe analyzer. So now it comes to the fact that I need to do math to figure out exactly how much oxygen I want, and then gotta do some math to figure out exactly how much volatiles I have. And like I said, just from knowing the process, I know that the oxygen is going to be the limiting ingredient. So I put most of my safeties to make sure that that doesn't get emptied. You never want to tell a human stationeer that they are out of welding fuel and they are also running out of air. And then and then boss or commander or somebody just comes up and just I completely lost my train of thought. I don't even know where I was going with that. I think I'm fighting some drowsiness. Anyways, fuel mixing. Let's see, what was I doing here? Oh yeah. Gotta know exactly how much oxygen is in the output so that I can put exactly how much volatiles I need. Um, I have to fix it later. I don't know if I fix it in this video or the next video. That's what I'm paying attention to right now. So right now, the oxygen setting, that's what I did. I defined that I want exactly 2,000 moles of oxygen in my fuel mix. So what that is, well, technically, only in the analyzer. I eventually see the error of my ways. If I have 2,000 moles within my my pipe network, and it's not it doesn't have much volume, I'm gonna just outright destroy the entire system because 6,000 moles of potentially 100 degrees Celsius fuel mix is gonna need quite a bit of storage in order to not go over 60 megapascals. Because keeping in mind that I have an insulated tank there, so some of it, or most of it, is going in there. So I need to make sure that in my, I believe, 400-liter fuel pipe. Oh. Yeah, I messed up over here. I think I remember that and moved there to the wrong place. Whoops. But yeah, I would need to have enough volume for that, so I'll eventually fix that. Because like I said, 6,000 moles of fuel mix in a 400-liter pipe. Well, and it's 100 Celsius. This is going to get spicy cramped in there. Now, yeah. This one was like, why? Literally got that to go inside to export to the chip so that I can go put it in there. As soon as I bring the chip back, it literally finishes. I set the setting to see exactly how much volume the volume pump needs to pump to get that. Seeing that in the orders of the 100,000s, I was like, dang, I have extremely small amount of oxygen. That's just wow. That's a big. So I can be reasonably assured that that the oxygen setting is gonna work well. So now comes the next thing. tying the volatile pump to based on how much oxygen there is. So it's essentially a copy and paste. I gotta find out how much volatiles there is. I gotta find out how much oxygen there is, and I want to hit a target of double what the amount of oxygen is. And then I want to subtract how much volatiles from that number so that I know exactly how much I need. And I'm using a routine calculate setting because I feed it pressure, I feed it temperature, and I feed it how much it needs. And I noticed that, wow, okay, I need very little because the volatiles is high pressure. I'd need such a tiny amount of such a tiny setting from my fuel pump. So now I gotta basically set the stuff to get that going. And then I see that happening, and I'm like, okay. That was a nod of approval that says, yes, I approve. And then I keep coming back to it. It's like, I know the problem. The problem with that is that I'm reading only the pipe. I'm not reading the tank. And I'm trying to decide, do I want to put the fuel tank, get the total moles of the entire network, the pipe and the tank, and then use that? And for the time being, I said, nah, I'm not going to bother. It's just too much time. I don't want to deal with it. But then I was thinking about it. I said, well, that could be a problem because what if the H2 combustor tries to run with an imperfect fuel mix? That would be kind of bad. Back to the drawing board. Now, I comment out the on for the volume for the oxygen pump because temporarily I want to manually feed and make my own fuel mix. I needed the volatile side of the things to be good on its own. That way I could just, you know, feed it the oxygen that's needed. So here's space. Okay, so I did put 2 megapascals. So I wanted to have at least 2 megapascals of oxygen storage. So I'm trying to make sure that the oxygen pump for the fuel mixing does not deplete my oxygen to the point where I can't breathe anymore. Because 2 megapascals is kind of enough on a 6,000 liter tank. Is not enough to fully pressurize, say, an expansion, but it is enough to keep me going with the canister as well as maybe slightly pressurize it. Now, originally, I hard set it, but then I realized that I probably want to put that at the top because I'm just going to be adjusting the top. I'd rather adjust the top and fix things as as the playthrough progresses. Back to watching that volume pump do its thing. But it is getting the mix correct. It's just being absolutely annoying. That's what I did. So when I go back and fix it, I want the total moles for both the pipe network and the tank. I think that's how it ended up being fixed unintentionally. I think I noted that I went up roughly, what, 5, 7 moles? I have to go back and check. Of oxygen in the greenhouse, mind you, this whole space in the 10-20 minute time period. That's why I think that the sprouts still produce full oxygen, because if they produce a diminished amount of oxygen, I would think that it wouldn't have been that big of a change, because this is a it's a 2x4 greenhouse up top, and then so that's also in the bottom, so that's 8 frames plus another 8, so 16, 8, 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then another 8, yeah, 24. So 24 frames, So 24 frames, 5 moles, that
Air tank critical. Oxygen low. Low pressure.
that's quite a bit.
Oxygen critical.
24 times 5, yeah, like 120-ish. Yeah, 120 moles of oxygen, and what, that 20-minute time period? That's quite a bit. And so now I'm basically trying to bring it down to a point, because I need oxygen. I need oxygen to go in there so that I can start properly testing the fuel mix. It's like, alright, so that turned off. That means I got a grand total of 274 moles of oxygen. I'm like, oh, that's not enough, but that I'll make do with that. It's such a tiny amount of oxygen. But yeah, I mean, I look at the tank and I see that it's practically a perfect fuel mix. So next comes the H2 combustor. Now the H2 combustor, I also needed to put a limit, because I do want to build up fuel so that I can eventually run combustion centrifuges out of it, or actually use fuel for my furnace to get it nice and hot. So I do also want to limit it in a way that it doesn't draw too much fuel, so that I still have fuel for the stuff. The problem, though, is that, once again, I'm rolling a boulder up the hill. I need oxygen so that I can make enough fuel, and I need enough fuel so that I can start making water, and I need water so that I can actually start cooling it down and build up my water supply. So it's basically a huge boulder I'm rolling up the hill. So for the most part, the system's going to get bypassed quite a bit. Like, I'll have to control steady, but the limits for activating, mixing or filling, I'm going to remove those temporarily, because I need to actually run those. I can be assured that if I turn the oxygen mixer volume pump on, it's going to mix fuel and make it properly until I shut it off. And it's the same thing with the H2 combustor. If I pump fuel to the input pipe of the H2 combustor, then the H2 combustor will turn on and make water at night if there's fuel in the pipe. It's not going to turn on or anything if one, there's nothing on the input, and two, the water tank actually fills up. So that's the goal. So this one's not going to be too bad. It's essentially like the filters. If there's something in the input, going ahead and turn the mode to active. Now what I wanted to do is to actually put the whole thing in idle mode so that I can have the thing on. And that's basically what I needed to do. and I did the wrong thing. I'm like, oh, I don't know why. Every time the SNEC and the SEQC, when I'm in a hurry, I always pick the wrong one. So yeah, every time. I don't know why. I just do. I don't know why. Now, this is what I mean. When I make code, I know I make a lot of mistakes. So I just gotta go and I gotta test them every single time. Sometimes as I make them, sometimes I know ahead of time what it needs to be like, and I can write the code. So there's two things that the thing needs to control. One, when there's fuel on the input and it's night outside, which means I'm going to be looking at the temperature less than 150 Celsius, although I think it's 300 Celsius in the H2 combustor. So when it's nighttime and lower than that temp, I'm going to turn it on to make water, especially if the fuel the water storage tank is not to pressure, doesn't have enough water. So that's what it's going to do. As far as getting fuel into the input, I will have it control the input pump eventually based on the fuel tank. So I don't want it to pump in fuel from the fuel tank if there's too little fuel in there. That will come later on this script. And so you're probably I don't remember if I actually type it in there and then comment it out, but that is the thing that that is the consideration. I don't want it to make too much fuel, so I want it to store some fuel in itself, and I want it to run and make steam if the steam tank is not filled. And so eventually it's going to fill up the steam tank and then it's going to stop running and consuming fuel and allow my fuel mix to actually come up. Because, I mean, let's just be honest. If I need to make 50 liters of water, 50 liters of water, if I need to make 2 liters of water at night, I'm only expecting to grab, maybe uh, 80, 240 moles of fuel. So if it only grabs 240 moles of fuel, eventually I'm gonna have more. I'm gonna have a surplus of fuel for other stuff, and the H2 combustor is not gonna make as much. Um, Now, since it has to fill up the steam tank, it's gonna grab any available fuel to do that with, and that's gonna go in conjunction with the Stirling cooling system, where it's gonna grab hot steam, cool it down at night, and then push it into my water system. The hardware is there. I'm just making sure that the quote software is here and available. One of the main things when you're doing coding is you really need to understand your device. If you don't understand your device, it's going to be hard to code. So I already did the whole mode for the H2 combustor. If the temperature outside is below the trigger point, what did I say? 200 Celsius. Below 200 Celsius, and there's pressure on the inputs, then I'm going to activate the H2 combustor. Now, if I have pressure in the H2 combustor and there's pressure in the output pipe of the H2 combustor, and if I sanitize those, then I make sure that the output pump, the 100-liter turbo pump, gets turned on so that it can keep vacating it. Now, this line right here is I'm making the conditions for making sure the what am I doing here? Why is this here? I know this is the tank pressure, so I want to make sure that if the steam pipe is below 30 megapascals, I want to be able to let the thing turn on. If the fuel pipe is greater than 1 megapascals, then I'll allow it to draw fuel from the input. Oh, that's what it is. That's for drawing fuel for the inputs. That's what this is. Man. So this is the input pump. I don't whatever. That's fine. So I'm reasoning out and making the logic for working the input pump. So I want to make sure that there is, under those conditions, if the steam pipe is less than 30 megapascals, that means that I still can make water. And if the fuel pipe is over 1 megapascals, and the input pipe is less than 4 megapascals, then I'm just going to draw from the volume pump into the H2 combustor. No, I didn't comment that out. That's right, I didn't comment that out. I just left it in there. That right there is for me to hard set the turbo volume pump so that I don't feed it backwards. There we go. Make sure that it pumps out, not pumps back into it. And we're wrapping up here. So, quite a bit of coding done. That pump is on. I think I'm like at a micro liter setting on that thing. So now I'm wrapping up, and yeah, I think mission is almost a success. And look at that, we are back up to, well, I got like 0.8 extra moles or something. When I drain the thing, I try to pick a point. Like if I think I picked to 20 moles or something. But anyways, we have all the potatoes. They're all growing. They're all mostly happy. I'm making oxygen. So now it's just a matter of I need to let this room pressurize so that I can remove all my stuff in there. And I just need oxygen. This is where I made that mistake. I accidentally got that pipe network out in here. And so then I'm like, okay, well, if I remove some, I can pressurize it, right? How much oxygen is here? Or maybe I can pressurize and add enough missing oxygen for here. Notice that, yeah, that's not going to work. So, whoops. Oh, well. I added an extra 60 moles of oxygen in there. That's fine. That's fine. I still got my portable tank. So, yeah, I left this so that you can see my kerfluffling around. And that's when I realized, whoa, it's only got barely 1 kilomole? That's not a lot. So, catch y'all next time as we continue programming stuff. Hope to see you then. Thank you, and have a good day. Goodbye.